Is a hearing. Okay, so this is Tom Frieden, who was at Barack Obama's CDC. And essentially they're talking about would it be safer to reopen if there's contact tracing in place? And Representative Andy Harris is going to have a pretty solid response when it comes to this whole cost benefit analysis and safety of reopening thing. Let's check this out.
Also a medical doctor.
Andy Harris is also, Dr. Andy Harris is also a medical doctor. He looks like, if this is Andy Harris, he very much has the look of an annoying doctor turned suburban Republican congressman. This is actually what I would guess he was if I just saw his picture. Let's play the clip.
We just have very intensive education processes so that every American follows social distancing, wearing a mask, and hand hygiene. So we kind of hammer this in because these are the principles, and get a test if you're symptomatic.
So I think that's correct. I think we can do both, and we have to do both because this is a very infectious virus and it's very deadly for certain people.
But the criteria for reopening include the need, and I've seen this where it's been suggested, don't reopen until you have contact testing in place.
What we can say is you will be safer if you're able to open with contact tracing.
We're safer if we're not born. We're safer from death if we're not born, right? I mean, the bottom line is there's some element of risk, and I bring this back to stay at home might work in New York because if you leave your home in New York, you're going to get on a train, you're going to get on a subway, you're going to get in a crowded street. But if you're in parts of my district, you're going to leave home, get in your car or truck, drive to a store that has almost no customers in it, conduct your business, and go back home, because that's normally the way you live. So why would you insist that, or why is there insistence that stay at home is the broad blanket statement, it's effective, because I'm not sure it adds anything more in the instance I just gave you in a rural area. So why do we have a kind of one-size-fits-all approach when we can be much more nuanced about it?
The concept of physical distancing is an important one. And in the scenario you outlined, if the individual goes to the store and, for example, calls in advance, picks up the order at the front, that's a very low-risk interaction. If you go out and work outdoors, that's a very low-risk interaction.
Right. So I would suggest, I visited a couple of the stay-at-home things that just don't make sense to me.
So, first of all, we live in a country together. So there's an interdependence to these choices, even if you're in different places geographically. But
no, people never move from an urban area to a rural one or vice versa.
What's also interesting to me is that it isn't like what he's talking about is already happening, including in New York City. So you're conflating that basically safety practices with stores that are already open and hopefully following with a mass push to reopen everything, including intrinsic, like you can't social distance cutting hair. You can't social distance giving a tattoo. You can't social distance at a gym or giving a massage or whatever. So like, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about a overall reopen push, not essentially, because I haven't heard any stories about people in rural areas not able to work the fields or go to the grocery store. People go to the grocery store in New York. People go to the grocery store everywhere. That's not what's in play. What's in play is the premature pushing of masses of people into commercial and social interactions everywhere. And then of course the big ticket item in that clip is just Republican sophistry always at work. It's like, absolutely. The safest thing to do is to have not been born. And therefore, we should go reopen the economy in a pandemic. And if we look at a place like South Korea, which is reopening to some real extent, had elections, whereas center-left government just performed very well, partially because of how successfully they're handling this. They were able to contain it. Right? There was a stat that I think more people have died in Springfield, Massachusetts, close by where I grew up, than in the entirety of the Republic of South Korea. That is the consequence of national health insurance. You know, and it's so funny because Republicans, the right doesn't want to hear about South Korea at all. And the kind of technocratic neo-lib types are obsessed with the tracing and testing systems, which is part of it, but it's built on a foundation of robust and universal for everybody. My buddy Ben Burgess went there to teach. He's immediately on the national health system a couple of years ago. So, that's how you do it. You want to reopen, you have to have universal national health care. We don't have that. We got to go very slow and try to ramp things up for it to be safe.
Oh, well, I do think this clip served to highlight why it's important to have the right to a safe and legal abortion, though, right? Because like he said, you're safer
safety
from death if you're not born. Think of all those innocent little children whose lives we can safeguard 100% by making sure they're never born.
Right. That's a good point.
Yeah.